Welcome to Loco Listens.
Welcome to Loco Listens.
You're listening to Loco Listens.
You're listening to Loco Listens.
Loco Listens.
Welcome to Loco Listens.
Welcome to Loco Listens.
Welcome to Loco Listens.
Loco Listens.
Absolutely. It's all about this hero's journey. And you've both brought up some interesting points, especially if you think about this term Gnosis and how we almost need to have a direct personal experience with something divine in order to really believe in something divine. Like if someone tells you a story, you know, that's something. But if you have a direct experience, whether that's through mushrooms, like that's what I did when I was younger, or thinking about things differently and being willing to separate from the standard groupthink. And it's really interesting that you bring up this idea that, well, I would be jealous of people who were born again too. And I have a friend who actually complained about this, and he belongs to a certain church, and he would describe people who were feeling the Holy Spirit, like they were being possessed by this sort of light being. And he's like, when am I gonna get that? Like I've been waiting and waiting. Like I've been a good Christian boy. Like when is that gonna happen to me? And it's like when we base our our gnosis on other people's truth, like it can kind of get distracting. So I'm happy that you've both found ways to integrate your personal truth into this crazy world. And speaking of that, how have you been integrating these experiences since 2020? Because I can see that you have just had your first child, right? This is your okay. So transitioning from this 2019 to 2020 chaos that we just went through, and now seems like we're moving into a different era now. How have you integrated these experiences, and how have you been led to start this cool podcast, the New World Normies?
So integrating the experiences, it's always, if you like, for me, I mean, I started learning and reading about conspiracies, when I was fairly young. And I think just being in that world, it's almost like when things happen, you're like, oh yeah, it's like, you're almost expecting it to happen. And so when it happens, like I initially had a little freak out, like, pandemics can be scary. And then you see the global clampdown come and you're like, oh, okay, so what's happening is kind of true. What I've been reading about for years, there is something to it. Yep. And so I've been, at least for the past couple of years, I mean, the pandemic has definitely brought it on, but I feel like sometimes I need to justify my ideas and claims. So I have to go back to source material. Yeah. So it's like we can read about the World Economic Forum and all these different pandemic scenarios that played out. But then it's like, let's go back even further. And so I've been more into like technocratic and globalist books. Right. Like H.G. Wells, like the Huxleys that we talked about on our most recent podcasts, and seeing the philosophy and the mindset behind something like what happened in 2020, because then it all makes sense. And then you don't have to freak out about it, because then you just know the type of people you're dealing with. And then you try to navigate it through there. And we've just been tried not to be like scared and freaked out by it. I mean, we brought a life into this world because I know a lot of people think that it's a scary time, like I can't have kids. But I mean, life is pretty intense for most people throughout history. So I think it's worthwhile overall to bring it in.
Beautiful.
Yeah.
she kind of agrees.
She agrees, yeah.
She's like, thanks a lot, guys. Like I was perfectly fine on the other side. Now you're bringing it over here.
What an opportunity.
Yeah.
Yeah, I was chilling the other side.
I think for me, like for 2020, it was one of I would say 2019 was probably one of the worst years of my life. And then 2020 happened, and it was actually kind of one of the best.
Me too. It was a relief, right?
Yeah, it was. I was working in an industry that I hated. I discovered that I have pictures of myself where I aged dramatically within, I would say, 2019 to 2021, but mostly like 2019 to 2020, I aged myself. And I was like, this isn't healthy. And the lifestyle I was working in the hospitality industry. And you're working late nights, you're not doing anything for yourself, you're eating horrible. Nothing about it is self-care.
Yeah, it can be very draining. Yeah.
Extremely draining. And then this is where it gets really weird for me. And that 2020 is actually the year of, I would say, more ego death for myself. Not because I was taking hallucinogens, which I was, but also because I had like a lot of things happen and weird things. And I started getting more into the occult, not necessarily practicing it, but definitely doing some meditative practices and then just reading more into it. And even the dipping of my toes into it, things were happening. And I was like, I'm not saying that like, you know, I created anything or whatever. I'm just saying that things started happening. And when COVID happened and the things that I was stumbling across wasn't by chance or accident, I was like, there's something there to this. And then when you learn about what's happening with like the age of Pisces into the age of Aquarius and COVID's kind of like this catalyst, it would be ignorant for me not to want to continue to explore that. So for me, 2020, like, I hate to sound so selfish, but it was actually like a pretty good year for me as a human being.
No, that's awesome. Yeah, it's good to hear that. Like, yeah, I think we're tempted to like think it's selfish because it was promoted as a very trying and terrible time. But I think for a lot of people, they finally had time to open up their minds to different you could say like different lifestyles or different ideas, different ways of living that maybe just didn't seem feasible previously. Like, I mean, for the three of us, like I was not imagining starting my own podcast last year or the year before that. I mean, especially in 2019, because I was in the same boat as you. I was working 7 days a week and I was practically killing myself every day. And so the fact is that like I'm really happy to hear that your journey has included your readjustment of your health and figuring out different practices. Like I can tell you for myself personally, I discovered I was listening to like Jordan Peterson and hearing about him and Michaela and how they found this carnivore diet in about 2018 when I started working 7 days a week. So that was perfect timing because it helped me stay afloat. Without that, I would probably be in a padded cell somewhere. So how did you guys come across this new health practice or this new ideology, and what kinds of things would you like to share about this adjustment in your lifestyle?
So, it's really funny. We were basically, I wouldn't say basically vegetarian. I would never call myself a vegetarian, but the amount of vegetables that I was forcing myself to eat and whole grains, and supplements, and he was like way more strict than I was. I remember at one point he even said like, I don't think we should eat red meat anymore. I'm like, no, I'm not getting up cheeseburgers. It was a lot of chicken. It was like a lot of pork,
green smoothies, raw kale, garlic.
So much kale. People used to make fun of me for how much kale and kombucha I would drink. And
can't have enough kale. Gotta have more.
The three of us were that vegan meme. Like, how much kale can we consume in one day? Like, I challenge you.
All the seed oils. I never paid attention to seed oils. I was like, oh, canola's bad, but like all the other seed oils were perfectly fine. A lot of just like paleo. I use that term very loosely, but it's just like, oh, there's nuts and honey in it, but it's like it's a candy bar. You know what I mean? Like, so I was super unhealthy when that was going on, and I wasn't losing any weight. I was exercising a lot. It just seemed to be this constant like plateau I was on. And then Sean Baker was on Joe Rogan. Joe Rogan's like such a gateway drug.
Seriously, to many things.
I know. It's kind of a meme, but he has on so many important people, and he reaches such a huge audience that it's invaluable. Yeah.
So when that happened and he was like, this carnivore diet, I'm like, that's crazy. You need a salad. You need vegetables. Rhonda Patrick says like blah, 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 blah. And then when he started doing it more and more, I was like, oh my God, you're actually getting like really good results. Let me try. And then I started getting good results, but I don't need to go as strict as he does. And that's when I was like, okay, I'm going to be open-minded about this and look more into it, listen to more podcasts, seek more professional guidance on it. It wasn't just like, I'm just going to eat Slim Jims all day and bacon. Kind of
well, Oreos are technically vegans. You know, there's like a flip side to that too. You know, if you want to be vegan and just eat Oreos, then you can do that.
Save
oh
the
my
animals,
God.
eat Oreo.
I follow some like raw vegans on Instagram that I used to be friends with like once upon a lifetime. And the food that they're posting is like, it's raw vegan pizza. And I'm like, oh my God.
They really do miss meat quite a lot. You can tell.
Yeah, they need all the meat substitutes and anything that looks like meat.
Yep.
And their plates, I don't know if do you follow any like vegans on Instagram or social media? Like,
yeah, I mean, I was vegan for over 2 years, and it was like it directly led me down this same path, which is really fascinating. And I think just in a general sense, like we were probably fed the same propaganda about stop eating red meat if you want to live longer and protect the planet. And it could be true, or no, sorry, it could be possible that both of those things are bullshit. Pun intended.
Yeah. Well, it's just like so funny because like the amount of food that I had to eat, and I wasn't even vegan vegetarian, I was still eating meat, but the amount of food that I had to eat was insane. And then I look at these
volume,
like
calories.
What the raw vegans eat, like they eat so much.
You guys like
food,
fasting now? Sorry, do you guys enjoy fasting now that you've kind of made this switch, more of like a high fat diet? Like you guys enjoy doing a little intermittent fasting?
So when I started doing it, like I was into fasting. I mean, I work in the supplement industry. And
cool.
So like I just did tons of research. I dived in. I mean, I read The Stone Age Diet by Walter, I can't remember his last name, but he was a gastroenterologist in the 1970s. And he basically goes through and details why he thinks a fat and meat diet is the most appropriate diet based on our gastroenterology, based on our digestive system. And I thought that's really interesting. And I started reading about fiber, I read The Fiber Menace, and then just more and more books, The Fat of the Land, about Villemar Stephenson, who studied with the Inuit, and he ate a meat-fat diet for years. They studied him in Bellevue Hospital, and he had no deficiencies. He was super healthy. And so I was like, man, maybe there is something to this. And so I tried a little bit of fasting, but it didn't work out. Like, I feel like from my research now, from what I understand, that if people, it is good to, bring about autophagy and to clear out some dead cells. And there's other benefits to it too, but
maybe not every
day. For the most part, I think if people feel great on fasting, that's good. But long-term fasting could be detrimental to hormones, could be really stressful on the body. But it's probably not a bad thing to do every once in a while. I just find that I feel better when I eat a nutrient-dense meal, and I don't necessarily need to just fast because my body is craving something. I give it to it, and it feels good.
Yeah.
So it's just like that feedback response.
It's the way life should be.
Yeah.
Oh, I forgot to mention, I had tons of GI issues. Like,
me too. Yeah,
tons of GI issues. Went to the doctor for it. I have a gluten issue. The doctors were like zero help with it.
They're so clueless.
Like I remember I was getting tested, and I tested positive without having any gluten in my system for one blood result. The other blood result came up negative, and then they were like, well, now we have to go in and look. That came out negative, but then I realized I was supposed to be eating gluten during that time. I said something to my doctor, and she goes, like, what do you mean, like, thanks. And then I started, from the seed oils, I started getting like lupus-like reactions, like rashes everywhere. It looked like acid was thrown on my face a couple times.
Yeah.
And then that's when I cut out seed oil. So anytime, like, if I could like tell anyone to do anything, cut that out first, and then keep going. I'm not a doctor or went to school for it, so grain of salt. But at the same time, like, I have tons of friends where I'm like, oh, I want to, improve this. I'm like, stop eating seed oils.
Makes sense. And something else that you brought up earlier, like with your doctor, they're usually clueless. And the other thing to keep in mind is like your family as well. Like, I know, like, so I've gone, on both ends of the spectrum. Like, I was a vegan. I'm not a vegan anymore. I was a strict carnivore, like meat, salt, water for quite a while. I'm not doing that anymore. I'm more in the middle, meat and fruit. But anyways,
Yeah.
I definitely experienced the stigma of either end. It didn't matter what quote unquote diet I was doing. My friends and my family thought I was absolutely crazy. So whether it's your diet or your health, or even just talking about these conspiracies or thinking about the nature of government in a different way, what was your situation and your experience dealing with the quote unquote, the legacy normies, as you like to describe them on your podcast? Like, how has that been for you to kind of make peace with the fact that you have your own truth, yet your friends might be on a different wavelength? What has that been like for you?
Yeah, I mean, it's been, at least for me, very interesting. At least let's say for the diet aspect. I mean, I dealt with some fairly serious health issues, so it drove me out of necessity towards this. And I think people, until someone's really sick, they don't really understand that if doctors aren't helping you and if you're not finding any kind of relief or solution.
Sorry.
She's getting upset.
It's all right. It's all right.
We get some more milk. That you have to do it out of necessity. So I think people just, again, don't understand, and so they do question a lot, and they think you're crazy, but it really is a test for you, because if you're seeing results, or if you're reading something that makes sense, that clicks, or some information that you deep dive on something, and there's this reference, and it all kind of checks out. And I mean, what else can you do except for to continue to follow it? You know what I mean? And I think it's really just a kind of, you have to build a kind of, I don't know, will.
Oh yeah.
To defend against, not like attacks, but the constant questioning, because there is going to be a lot of questioning, a lot of family engagements where things come up, or opinions where people can poke fun and whatever else. But it's really just testing your resolve. So I think at the end of the day, you find that truth. I think it's just, again, worth the pursuit, kind of no matter what. And
always.
And I think that's what we do as New World Normies, to try to fight back against that old legacy bullshit corporate normie system that was set up for people.
I think the way that we handle it is also just honestly having each other,
Yeah.
because we just look at each other and we get so frustrated.
We could just vent and yell at each other.
Because our parents and in-laws, they drive us absolutely crazy, and we're watching them age and their issues, and we're just like, for the love of God, can you please just listen to us?
Please,
and, just cut this out. Like, my mom recently discovered that she feels better not eating gluten. I'm like,
oh, there you go.
Okay.
It's a start.
Yeah.
We've been doing that for a decade.
And she just rolled her eyes at me. I'm like, Mom, I actually had medical intervention on this, and a doctor told me my blood work, and she still just rolls her eyes. And then she tries it, and she's like, oh my God, I feel better. I'm like, oh, okay, great. And then with our friends, it's pretty hard to navigate, I'm not gonna lie, because they'll say whatever they want to say. And if we were to say what we wanted to say, we would probably be more isolated than they would, because they have more of the mainstream narrative. And I have friends who will say things like, oh, white cis men. And I'm like, you're surrounded by white cis men in your life. Like, why are you just like spitting out whatever you saw on Instagram to be mad about?
Right.
And it's just that kind of stuff where you're just like, you kind of have to like roll your eyes at it. But the take that I'm mostly trying to live by is let be, but don't compromise my beliefs.
Yeah.
But also know that just because someone believes something else doesn't mean that it's a personal attack. And also know that I'm no longer there to like extend any sort of like preservative for people.
Ooh, interesting choice of word there, preservative. Because the legacy media tends to want to preserve some beliefs or ideologies that are probably outdated at this point, or they're bringing in just new absurd clown world level shit that like, how is that going to stick? But yeah. Sorry,
it's so cringy. But I mean, at the end of the day, I think the best thing to do is just realize that each of us as individuals kind of have our own journey we got to go through. And so, I've heard other people in the conspiracy world just, you're going to get criticized, but you just got to take it. And
it's,
just keep going.
It's not my job to, like, the best example I could give you is COVID and
Mm.
the jab. And when we would have people hound us about information that they were seeing, we were like, but we see different information. So why is it I have to listen to you when I see this to be my truth? You have your truth. Why do I have to bend the knee to what you're telling me? Why don't you look at what I'm looking at? But I'm not going to be the one that's going to put that study in front of their face. They have to want to look at it themselves.
Yeah, they have to want it. They have to want to do it for themselves.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah, like we're trying to be the opposite of like vampires. Like,
yeah,
we don't need your energy to survive. They need our energy to survive. They need us to get the vaccine so they can feel better about what they're doing, but it doesn't bother us either way.
Yeah,
I totally hear you. Yeah, I went through the whole vaccine mandate thing, and thank God I came out on the other side without any issues. I was able to get religious exemption, but I know not everyone was given that opportunity. And but I had to really fight for it. And if I had just kind of like bend my, you guys ever watch Game of Thrones?
Oh yeah.
Like bend the knee to Fauci or whoever, and it's like at a certain point you're like, all right, well, I'm not gonna do that anymore. And it was the most terrifying thing I've ever done. And then now, like I was telling you guys earlier, like thinking about and actually planning and creating this move away from my hometown to a brand new place with brand new people. It's pretty scary. So like when you guys think about the new World Normies podcast and what you've done so far, what stands out to you in terms of things that have surprised you, things that you've learned, or other conversations that you look forward to having in the future? Like tell me about your experience with this podcast.
It's been great. I mean, we've talked about this stuff for years, and it's like it never really clicked because I'm seeing all these podcasts come to fruition. I'm like, I can never do that, or we could never do that. It's like whatever. And then I think we just kind of had enough. We're like, look, all we do is just talk to each other about this, and we're probably just getting sick of it. So let's do something, because I hear so many people say it's like, well, if you know this stuff, you got to do something about it.
Right.
And so what's something easy that we could do? It's like, let's just talk about it and put it out there, and maybe people dig it, maybe they don't, but it's at least it's something,
Yeah.
Put up some memes on Instagram or whatever, like, fight the good fight in the meme war, at least.
Meme as much as you
Yeah, I
can.
guess for me, it's kind of like a chicken or the egg. Wait, egg or the chicken scenario. Where am I creating a new world because I'm talking about it, or was this new world always here and I'm just trying to navigate it now? It's one of those types of things where I'm just like, with this podcast experience, you're putting your money where your mouth is, essentially, which is something I struggle to do. I want change. I want to get out of a rut, and I'm like, well, I'll just Google it, and that's as far as I'm going to go. But now this is the first time I've actually done it, and I just look forward to, shouting to the void and hope that something benefits from it. That's basically it.
Right.
Yeah, I mean, it's kind of a risk too, because you're putting your ideas out there.
Yeah,
I mean,
it's very vulnerable.
Yeah, you're putting yourself in a vulnerable situation, but I guess it's a good thing to be in those positions, because then you get to see kind of how well your ideas do. And it's a good way to practice discussing these topics, because I feel like as time goes on, we're going to be discussing this more and more with a wider variety of people.
Right. Like it's already been years of discussion, and now like this is the opportunity for all of us to continue and to learn more. But I've been kind of playing with this idea lately that it's not always about collecting all this research, but it is about trying to figure out how to apply these ideas, or figure out how to respond to these ideas, so that we could, have the best impact on ourselves and on the people that we love the most. And it's ironic what you brought up earlier too, because when I was listening earlier to your, this was episode 10, when you spoke about Aleister Crowley and Manly P. Hall, and you were talking about the idea of manifestation. It's almost like that phrase, be careful what you wish for. And like, you never
Yeah.
know, like if you think about something long enough, you could actually somehow manifest it. Like it's the movie Aladdin. There could be a genie in the bottle, maybe not literally, but the fact is that like we are the genie, and we're creating this reality as we manifest every day. And I'm curious, when you guys look forward to the future of your podcast and the future of your family, and you know what you're going to be discussing, what kinds of things stand out to you? Like what kinds of topics do you want to dive into more, and how do you see you know, the rest of this month of May going for you? Like, do you have any plans, any guests? What's coming up for you guys?
So right now, I mean, we just due to the newborn, we definitely took a break there just because towards the end of her pregnancy and just trying to get settled. So it was about like 2 months or maybe a month and a half, and we didn't do any podcasts. And you know, we did miss it, and it's been nice to start it up again, because you know, things are happening constantly, and there's interesting topics to discuss and rant about, or you know, bullshit to talk about. But it's also nice, you know, getting to know the people in the community more and more, because then I'm finding new podcasts to listen to. And like, what was that, the mental masturbation podcast?
Oh yeah, the Master Debater. So that's
Master Debater.
Matt
Sorry,
from the Great Deception podcast. He hosts the Monday Night Master Debaters. It's very fun.
Yeah, that was great. And I listened to that podcast. It was just like, I wouldn't have known that was there, honestly, unless I, you know, really looked for it. But just again, getting to know these people, you can just get a link sent to you, check it out, and you know, you learn something new. And I've always been obsessed with podcasts and talks and debates, because I'm so, I don't know, maybe I'm just kind of not obsessive, but I like learning new things.
Yeah.
And I like reading and, you know, listening to debates and listening to different opinions, where, you know, I love music. I had music in my past, but, you know, podcasts and ideas have completely taken over my life.
Yeah, it's fulfilling in a much different way too. And, you know, I was going to ask you this question, but you've already answered it earlier. I was going to ask you, you know, because you brought up like some people are afraid to bring a new child into this world because of the way that it currently is. But it's like this chaos has always been here. And so what I was going to ask you is like, how did you guys, you know, obviously you have each other, and that's very, you know, that's a very profound connection to share, is to be able to talk about these conspiracies together. Because like I know couples who you know, it's like one person is into the conspiracies and the other is like, oh well, we don't really talk about that. So it's like you and your friends can talk about that, but it's cool that you do it together. So what I was going to ask you earlier, and maybe you can add on to it, is like, how did you prevent yourselves from becoming black-pilled? Or like what kinds of things do you remember or remind yourself that keep you in this more optimistic and less of a nihilistic mindset?
So I take full credit for that, for not getting black-pilled, because there have been times where he will come home and he does this. He goes,
I was
listening to this podcast. Oh man. I'm like, all right.
You have no idea what I just listened to.
Let's talk about it.
Yeah. Let's talk about it. And then I'm like, okay. What's the solution? How are we going to, like, you can't tell me this. And if it is what it is, and I believe you, and all the information's there, what are we gonna do? So are we, and the whole black pill thing, sorry, she just got like really fussy.
Moving around a lot.
Yeah. For 1 month old, she's very strong.
She's so strong.
Nice.
So it's just like, so what are we gonna do? And then he's just like, what do you mean, what are we gonna do? And I'm like, no, you are not going, because I'm a very sensitive person. I can't even watch a movie if something happens to a dog or a kid. I Google everything. I don't want to be emotionally invested in something, and then my week is ruined. So I'm like, what are we gonna do about this? So one point I think I was pregnant. Yeah, I was pregnant, and I was like, well, I'm pregnant and we're about to have a baby. Should I just go fucking kill myself right now? Because what you're telling me is that there's no hope and I should just go kill myself right now because of what this scenario is painting. And he was like, whoa. I'm like, no. You can't come in here and be like, oh man, you'll never believe what I just
everything's
heard.
gonna be fine.
Yeah.
Sorry.
Yeah, just
like,
kidding.
Sorry. Yeah.
And
take the blue pill, please.
Yeah.
Try this pill. Yeah.
And he was like, well, okay, yeah, you're right. I can't just come in with this nihilistic thing. And then when I get upset, be like, what's your problem? And I'm like, okay, no, we have to come up with solutions. And I think that's actually kind of circling back how this podcast is really, catalyst, is because you're just like, okay, well, it turns out you don't have to go bury yourself in a mountain somewhere. It turns out you have to go live in the woods. Turns out you can actually be in this reality and in a city and an infrastructure, and you're going to be okay.
Right.
Like, there's a lot of bad things that are happening, but it doesn't mean it's going to have to happen to you, as long as like there's things that you can look out for. And that has basically been the way to like not get black-pilled.
Well said.
Yeah,
Thanks.
I agree. Yeah, I mean, I definitely have taken a number of black pills in my life.
It's a necessary process.
Yeah, I mean, I just, when I was younger too, I was not very discerning. And I just took information because one thing led to another, and then I started believing a lot more things that I probably shouldn't have. And then that's why, like, I just want to become more critical, more nuanced with things, and try to do my research, like justify my claims. You know what I mean?
Right.
And so I don't feel crazy, and I don't feel like I'm taking black pills. But then also, bringing a new life in, it adds that light where you don't need that black pill anymore. You want to search, for a red pill. I don't know if there's a red and blue combined where you make a new world, and you kind of want to create something better. Purple, maybe. I don't know if that's
the colors get confusing. Yeah.
There's white pills too, I guess. I don't know.
Yeah, I subscribe more to the white pill, and I feel like in our relationship, I'm more the one who's like, pump the brakes. What's really going on here? And there's definitely been times where I'm just like, this is a little snake oily. Like, maybe we should.
Oh, it's good to recognize that. Yeah.
Yeah, there's a lot out there, and so that's the best thing to do in this, especially in this space, is just try to be as discerning as possible.
Yeah.
Well said.
And I feel like I definitely kind of I'm a little more of a gatekeeper on ideas and people.
That's good. I can test ideas out on her.
Yeah. Right.
If it gets to shut down, it's like, fuck.
So, like, this is like complementary energy, because like, sometimes you come home with a little bit of baggage and you're like, all right, I really need a little bit of help processing this. Like, can we just talk about it? And it's funny, like, Mark from my family thinks I'm crazy. In his intro, he mentions like, his like intro song. It's got some clips, and he's talking about how podcasting is kind of like therapy, and like, that's kind of what you've reminded me today. And there's also, something else I want to ask you. You guys ever listen to Tinfoil Hat, Sam Tripoli?
Yeah,
sure.
You've probably heard him say this multiple times. He's like, if I ever get black pilled, I'm just gonna stop doing this podcast because there'd be no point after that.
Yeah.
I'm like, yeah, right on, Sam. Like, because there would be no point. You'd be totally nihilistic. So I'm curious, and this is again another thing that Sam says a lot. A lot of people say this too, but I love asking people how they deal with this. When we're talking about a black pill or the nihilistic worldview, and how conspiracy leads to spirituality or vice versa. How do you guys rectify that principle, whether it's true or not? How does conspiracy lead to spirituality for you guys?
I think for me, it's just, you just question, you just ask questions. And I think ultimately, what's spirituality is kind of like the pinnacle of the conspiracy world. It's not just politics. It's not just culture. What's more important than life and death? What happens afterwards? Why are we here? I mean, those are like meta questions. And I think ultimately, if you're a person that asks questions and you want to delve into material, that you're eventually going to just lead yourself to or stumble upon these larger ideas. And I think that if you start getting into the mysteries, then you open yourself up to these things. Obviously, you got to be kind of guarded against some of those things and be careful where you walk. But, I think like you said, it's a perfect way of saying it. Conspiracies can lead to spirituality for sure.
Yeah, I would just say, I would say that the way for me is that when you look at all these, she's like, sorry.
You're all good. I appreciate you guys. Like, it's a full-time job being a parent, and I feel blessed that you have been so generous with your time, and I know it's not easy doing what you do.
It's hilarious
high
how she
school
was
teacher,
asleep.
so I don't deal with infants, but I know what it would be like to well, no, I couldn't say that, but yeah. Anyways.
No, I appreciate that. I really do appreciate that.
She was asleep earlier.
She was like dead asleep earlier, and then she was just like, "Oh, what's going on?"
It's just a very energetic conversation, so she's probably like, "Wow, this is a lot to take in." Like, oh.
Holy cow, you guys!
Oh my god, my parents are weirdos. Help! Someone help!
Someone help!
I would say it's the way for me with the whole entire spirituality and conspiracy is when a lot of it comes down to why these people who are in charge of the conspiracies, I guess you want to call them like shadow government or
right,
the people at the Bohemian Grove
level. Yeah,
it's like it all turns out they seem to be worshiping some sort of deity that represents death or power and that kind of thing, and Luciferian and all that kind of stuff. So then it's like, well, how do I not get sucked into a death cult?
right, yeah.
Well, they take it very seriously. So it's like, why would I not take this very seriously?
Exactly. Yeah, because they're all very intelligent. So it's like if we were to kind of just like laugh it off, like, oh, it's just those crazy, rich, powerful people. Like they don't know what they're talking about. It's like, well, I mean, they probably do if they're rich and powerful. Like they might know something.
Yeah, exactly. And then the whole Mason conspiracy, and that obviously leads into like spirituality. So it's just it's kind of frustrating. Like, do you ever listen to Sam Tripoli's podcast with Brian Callen?
Oh, Brian Callen's awesome. Yeah,
I love Brian Callen, but he's so frustrating to listen to because if you were to tell him that the same people that are involved with like JFK's shooting wouldn't be Luciferian or Satanist, you're like, there's no way. Like he keeps them separate. I'm like, no, they're really intertwined. Like you have to. The fact
like
that
David Icke says, it's like a spider web of this whole wide spanning network of people and companies, industry, things like that. Yeah,
especially how they do a lot of like their rituals, and the way that they do it is they put it in your face, so it's in your face, and that's how they get away with it karmically. So it's like, okay, well, they're obviously doing it, but then you try to explain it to someone, like, no, they're not. And it's like, okay, I'm just making up the pyramids and the signs and all that kind of stuff. So yeah, whatever. But yeah, I love Brian Callen, but when you listen to his Conspiracy Social Club, you're just like, dude, come on.
Yeah, I'm glad that you bring it up because there's there's an important principle to discuss here that we don't always have to agree on everything. And in fact, we can grow a lot more if we can learn to kind of just like rectify those disagreements and learn from each other despite any gaps in our agreements, and so it's a good reminder that if you run into someone like Brian Callen, he seems like a great guy. I obviously have never met him, but I've listened to him quite a lot, and I respect him for being firm on his stance. And we all have our own perspective. The whole thing about truth is that it's true for you, and that's a tough pill to swallow sometimes. But the fact is, like, like the people who say trust the science, they would accept things as truth, and there's nothing we can do to change their perspective. No matter how many memes we send them, it's like nothing will shake them. So it's good to like learn our limits and discern when our truth may never ever overlap with someone else's truth.
Yeah, and I totally agree with that. And I like that you brought up the trust the science, just because when I have to go trust other people's sciences, I do my research.
Yeah.
And it encourages me to do my own research. So that's why I have like always a hard time with declaring something. I kind of want to be more on the like, let's just wait and see what happens.
I'm speculate for now.
Yeah, let's just speculate for now. I'll never change my Facebook profile picture to whatever flag or I support for that week, because a lot of the times I heard a conspiracy that a lot of times when you do that, they're just collecting data. Or
it's like compliance, it's like, will you comply to the next wave of hysteria, basically?
Yeah, exactly. And that's what was that? Oh my gosh, like I'm totally blanking on this. I can blame Baby Brain for this, but what was that one war that they were able to pick up on Twitter?
Oh, a war?
That was the Arab Spring.
Arab Spring.
Okay.
Yeah. And that's why I've always been like super paranoid whenever something, like right now with the whole entire leak with the Supreme Court.
Right.
And like
right.
everyone's like posting all this kind of stuff. I'm like, wait, what's the agenda behind this?
Right. You think people like accidentally leak that, you know? It's like
yeah, who benefits from this, and why is it happening now? Like basic questions every person should be asking, no matter where you are in the political spectrum.
Right.
Exactly.
So whenever that happens, it's just like, wait a minute, who's really pulling the strings here? And I'm not gonna be a part of it. And my favorite thing that I feel like people should have learned their lesson the first time was the black box on Instagram.
Oh yeah. It's a Saturn worship ritual, if you really think about it. Yeah.
It totally was.
Yeah.
But then they ended up shooting themselves in the foot because they were doing something where it created less visibility. I don't know. I can't remember, but they ended up like going on Instagram being like, take it down.
You guys want to hear a funny story about that?
Yeah.
Of course.
I love this. This is the best accident ever. I just was in the right place at the right time, I guess. But if you go back to my Instagram, at Jake Loco, and you scroll down to, I think it was like somewhere in 2019, like this was before George Floyd or anything. There's a black square, like, you know, I didn't post on Instagram too regularly. So it's like, there was like, you know, life BC before COVID, and then there was COVID. And there's a black square on my profile at one point because there's like a video that I took in the forest with like a Friedrich Nietzsche quote that says like, you know, don't live a sedentary life. You know, I just paraphrase what he said. I can't remember but it's a black square during that time when there were so many black squares. And I was like, oh man, like, I guess I did it by accident, but you know, I didn't really mean to.
You're the OG black square. Like, mad respect, dude.
I'm high up in this cult here, but no. Devin, you said something earlier that I really want to touch on. It's the fact that, you know, you said earlier something along the lines of like, if you didn't do your research, that you would go crazy. And it's like, if you have these speculations or you hear these ideas, and you have to actually go in and look for yourself. And I really respect that you've said that, because that's, I think a lot of people, you know, I compare it to like, you could read the entire article or just glance at the headline and pretend like you know what you're talking about, you know? So I'm glad that that both of you have dove in to keep on learning and to be lifelong learners for sure.
Yeah, absolutely. And plus it's like, I've been in so many debates with my family and friends that it's like, I needed to harden my arguments a lot of times, or at least just point out references. It's like, oh, well, did you read this? Or have you read this book? Or not even
having
just
some kind of evidence. It's good.
Yes. Yeah, something. Exactly. And now there's so much, you know, disinformation in the news that you can't even say like, well, did you read this article? It's like, you have to almost that. Oh, hold on.
I'll take her.
She doesn't like the mainstream media whatsoever. You can tell.
Anytime you mention CNN, it's a total meltdown.
Yeah.
No. But yeah, so yeah, I think it's like, if you're gonna make bold claims, like you gotta back it up.
Yeah.
Or like you gotta at least steel man your argument, or steel man their argument. I think that's the best thing. And you know, you mentioned Jordan Peterson, and that's one of the things I've learned from him. And I mean, we actually went to see him speak, and I've read both of his books, and it's, you know, and I've also been a fan of Jung before, but I think what Peterson has done is really articulate a lot of his messaging and really channeled it into a very specific cultural time right now where it is hitting a lot of people. And I think his just advice, and it's way more than just clean your room, but it is during his debates. I don't know if you watched any of those with Sam Harris.
Oh yeah.
Yeah, and I found those fascinating. And I've read a Sam Harris book. I kind of find him a little annoying personally. I don't listen to his podcast very much. I have before. But I like, you know, looking at the other side, you know, steel manning their argument, you know, it helps your argument better.
Absolutely.
And just the idea that he put out that everyone knows something that you don't, and listening to other people too. Yeah.
Right on, man. Right on. Yeah. It's so cool. I mean, you know, Jordan Peterson, like you said, it starts with cleaning your room and getting your environment in order. gotta have order, man. Too much chaos. It starts there, but then you're led to, well, like he always says, you have to learn how to think. And that starts with reading and then writing about what you read. Like, that's why I'm an English teacher, because without my English teachers, I would probably be so clueless right now. I would be that guy just reading the headline and, be like, all right, well, I guess I'll move on. It's like, whoa, we got to slow down.
Interesting.
Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, so if I have a question for you, so you're an English teacher.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, what is it like dealing with other faculty and other teachers?
Yeah. I have great colleagues. I get along with everybody. I do notice sometimes, so like, I'll give you an example today. This has nothing to do with my coworkers. This is really just the culture of the school itself and the public education system. But we've been reading Night by Elie Wiesel. Are you guys familiar?
Oh, yeah.
Yep.
Yeah,
Okay.
I read that book.
So anyone who's not familiar, Night by Elie Wiesel is the autobiography of a Holocaust survivor in Auschwitz. And he was 15 years old when he was sent there. And at the end of Night, they copy in his Nobel Peace Prize speech in 1986. So we were looking at that today, and some of the ideas in the speech, like, I humbly respect Elie Wiesel. I grew up from, my Jewish mother has given me this connection to, the Jewish culture, and I'm not like a quote unquote Jew, but I respect what Elie has done in telling this traumatic story. But there were some messages in the speech that made me cringe a little bit, because it was talking about, well, there's a lot of injustice around us and it's our duty to do something about it. And I do agree, we have to do something about it. But I think the danger in that sentiment and that ideology is that people won't clean their own rooms. They'll let their personal lives go to shit, and they'll be worried about everyone else. I think I'm trying to figure out how to teach my students to take care of themselves and also care for other people at the same time. And that's through storytelling, through a story like Night. It's a good opportunity to think about, well, if you're nihilistic, if you're in a tough situation, then you might not make it. You're not going to survive. That's what Viktor Frankl talks about in Man's Search for Meaning. But for the sake of the question that you asked me, I do know that there's faculty out there in all sorts of public schools or private schools or wherever who are trying to manipulate the ideology that these kids come away with. So I would say my best response to that question is, because I don't want to throw any of my colleagues under the bus. They're all great. We all get along great. And I know they're all good people and they mean well. But I will say this: there are no better teachers than mothers and fathers. So whatever your kids are learning in school, if they go home and they talk about school and they put into context what they're learning, then that's the best kind of learning. But if it only happens in school, then what's the point,
Right. No, absolutely. Yeah, that's well said, for sure.
Yeah. That's something wise beyond your years to be like, yep, it's, because I see a lot of teachers that kind of take on this like martyr persona.
That's so dangerous, isn't it?
It's and I'm just like, whoa, chill out. Like, I understand what you're doing, but you're not supposed to be raising these kids. And for you to say it's really what the parents are doing and how they shape the minds of their kids. Like, you're there to give them the information. Do what you will with it, kid, but go home and have your family be the one who save you, which I really admire that you do that. That's amazing. Thank you.
It's been tough. Like, I literally graduated in April of 2020. And then I couldn't get a fucking job because there was nothing open. So I had plenty of time to do my own research and then get ready to start working. So this is my second year.
That's awesome.
That's awesome. Yeah. It's crazy to think because, teachers obviously are so important, but it's crazy to think how much power they wield because they can steer and influence.
Yeah.
Yeah, I would imagine. Because, you have an entire, you have an audience just ready to soak up whatever you're going to give them.
And I spend more time with these kids than their parents do. And that's just a fact. Like, they're, in a working class society. And so, it's just something that I want to keep in the back of my mind at all times is like, just like what Jordan Peterson was saying, like, you need to learn how to think and how to write and how to speak. And I always rejected whenever someone would tell me what to think or what to write or what to say. And that's so there's definitely like a common theme there, whether it's in education or just like in your social life, you know? If people are like, oh, well, here's the script, this is what you need to say. Well, I would totally reject that. And I'm glad you guys too. You guys are probably the most badass new parents that I've ever met. So I'm really excited for what's coming down the pipeline for you, whether it's the podcast or the baby or, you know, just whatever you guys will continue learning about in the future. And as we sort of wrap up, I do have a ritual last question for both of you. So we spoke about your truth in the beginning and when you started to speak your truth, and that invites you to think back to your past self and how you've grown and transformed throughout these crazy times. But even before COVID, there's a lot to consider and a lot of moments that I'm sure you can think of where you probably needed some advice or some guidance. So for each of you, I would like to ask if you could go back to your past self and give yourself some kind of message, some kind of tip or advice to help you get through a challenging time or a confusing situation. What kind of advice would you give your past self?
I think about this
Mhm.
quite often. Did you want to go first?
No, go ahead.
Okay. So 2020, I started to get into meditation, and one of the meditations I found was how to heal your inner child. And as like, you know, woo-woo as that sounds, I really needed it. And in that meditation, you practice yourself as being an adult, and you go to the timeline of when you were a child, and you hug the child, you tell the child that it's okay, I'm there. Like, I know at this point in time it's really scary, but this is me in the future. And I struggle with being in the now from, you know, past childhood and adulthood traumas. And I always wanted to learn how to cope. So what I would tell myself, I would go back to when I was 18, and I would tell myself that you need to be in the now and realize that your self-worth isn't going to be determined on how your peers are going to tell you it's going to be. And you just need to be in the now, and you need to realize that you can be the person that you originally envisioned yourself to be, and no one else is going to get you to but yourself. And that would have saved me a lot of money, a lot of heartache, a lot of BS, but what can you do? So that is what I would do, and go back in that timeline, give my 18-year-old self a hug and say that it's me from the future. I'm here now. I'm here to help you. I'm here to let you know you got to be in the now, and you got to define yourself and be okay with, you got to be okay with being alone, essentially.
Right. Be able to define yourself for sure. Yeah.
Yeah, I think I would actually do exactly a very similar thing to what she said as well. And I think I would just probably remind myself, you know, to be okay with struggle.
Yeah.
Just to be okay that this is a learning experience, that this is, you know, things are not going to last forever. And what you do now will make you the person that you want to be. And, you know, every moment does matter. And this is something that I try to tell myself every day too. It's just a constant thing that you really, also for me, is to find more inspiration earlier on. Because before I would just, you know, I felt like I was kind of aimless, because I never really sought inspiration. And so it took a while, and then there was just a spark, and like that inspiration came, and maybe it was supposed to be that late, but I think if I would have found and actually grasped for and looked for inspiration, that could have maybe changed a lot. But at the same time, it's, you know, that's the path we walk. So I can't really complain too much at the same time.
Yeah, I think my favorite thing to say, so stupid, but I always go, if some butts were candies and nuts, we'd all have a very Merry Christmas. It's like, it just gets me through the day.
Yeah.
Every day.
Yeah, because
Every
I'm just
day.
like,
Christmas ritual every day.
Right.
like something will happen to me now where I look back and like it's like 21-year-old Caitlin's fault that I'm in this position, and I'm just like ifs and buts. Or
I've been there. Yeah.
yeah. So yeah, that's kind of like now lesson learned. Make sure that you're not doing the things that you did when you were 21 and expect different results.
Yeah, absolutely.
Exactly.
Yeah.
That's important too, is don't do this. Don't understand the changes in your life and just be ready to grasp those changes, because you can't be the same person that you are when you're 21. Like obviously you're not going to be physically, but mentally, like you can't be stuck in the same habits. Even on a daily basis, so people will sometimes, I'm guilty of this too, wasting an entire day. And then you're just dreading the nighttime because you look back and it's like, what did you accomplish? Yeah.
That's like letting your room get really dirty, and then you kind of realize like, all right, like, well, I could have spent all day cleaning it and then relaxing, but you're like, oh,
you could
missed that
appreciate the
opportunity.
relaxing
Yeah.
time.
Yeah.
So you guys have sent a really positive message and a very inspiring message for sure that, despite the challenges or the setbacks that we may have experienced in the past, if you remember to be here now and be yourself and be clear on what you really want and who you are, then you can do whatever you want. And essentially, it's great that you found each other and that you both share these values, because as new parents, as quote unquote conspiracy researchers or new world normies, we all used to be normies, but you guys have woken up in a brand new world. And I'm really excited to see what you guys do now that you're awake, quote unquote. So it's been an absolute pleasure getting to chat with you guys, Devin and Kevin from the New World Normies podcast. Will you go ahead and let everyone know where they can find you and how they can get into contact with you?
Yeah. So you can find us on Instagram, New World Normies Podcast. Our podcast is found on Apple, Google, Buzzsprout, Spotify, anywhere. If you guys ever want to contact us and if you want to chat at some point in the future, we'd love to talk. You can email at newworldnormiespod@gmail.com. And I think that's pretty much it.
Instagram message.
DM us, whatever, cool memes, anything.
Yeah. And
Send
thank you so
all
much
the
for having us
memes.
on.
Absolutely. This has been an absolute pleasure. You guys are badass, and I'm looking forward to doing this again. We will do a bunch of podcasts in the future. I can already tell. This is like, when we hit the 1 hour and whatever mark, it's like, well, we got to wrap it up, but I know that there's a lot left to talk about. So it's really exciting, and I appreciate you guys. Thank you for being so generous with your time, and hope you guys have a happy Wednesday. Oh, the last thing, May the 4th be with you.
Yes, and also with you.
Appreciate it.
Thanks, man. Thank you for having us.
Thank you so much.
Absolutely.
And sorry about the baby.
Oh, no, it's all right. She's a real pleasure, and she has awesome parents. So we're very
Thank you.
Thank
Very
you.
nice. Thank you.
Thank you.
Cheers. Howdy, friends. That was a great episode with Devin and Kevin from the New World Normies podcast. So happy we all got to put this together with our busy schedules, especially for them being new parents. It's very cool. They're awesome people. I'm really glad we got to put this together, like I said, and looking forward to doing some more podcasts with them. So make sure, if you guys haven't already, go find the New World Normies podcast, whether it's on Spotify or Google, whatever platform you've been digging these days. I use Spotify because I'm a bit of a normie, but hey, nothing we can do about that, eh? Well, in this outro, I just wanted to give a quick thanks to my good friend Amy. Amy, if you're listening, thank you so much for listening. Thank you so much for supporting me and for encouraging me. And for everyone else on this Telegram chat that we've got going on here, that's t.me/Loco listeners. I appreciate all you guys. I love you. So happy we got to create the intro together. So what you've heard at the beginning of the episode was all thanks to the contributions of my good friends on the Telegram chat. So thank you guys for sending that in, and really cool to see now we are moving into the double digits. This would be episode probably 11 or 12. We'll see what happens, guys. And as you keep hearing me mention, just make sure you guys go and check out Ghost on the My Third Eye podcast. Like I said earlier in this episode, I've brought him up about 5 or 6 times because thankfully, he's been able to introduce me to so many cool podcasters and personalities and just wonderful human beings all around. So please go check him out. He's on Patreon, My Third Eye Podcast. A lot of good stuff out there, and really looking forward to seeing who else I am going to encounter on this wide web of weird and whimsical people on the internet. So I appreciate you guys putting yourselves out there just like I'm putting myself out there now. And let me leave you with a good old message here. So wherever you are, be here, be now, and be you.